All right. Hello, everyone. We are, I believe, live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Court of the Rings on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. I am Latro's community manager, Cordovan, and we're doing something special today, and we have got a fairly hard stop time of 1 o'clock here today as well. So I'm going to get right to it. Let's start by introducing our producer, Renidia. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Just looking ahead to this hurricane that we've got headed to the East Coast. But other than that, things are great. How are you doing?
Doing fine. And we are doing something, like I said, special here. What we did is we put a thread on the Lotro subreddit a week ago, and we took a whole bunch of questions. We ended up something with a little shy of 200 responses. We called through the list, tried to put together as many as we could answer, even if sometimes the answer was, we don't know, or we'll look into it, what have you. But we've got a whole bunch of them here, and we're just going to start going through the list. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm going to keep an eye on chat room. Let me know if you've got any audio, video issues, but it seems like we're going okay, and you can even see the first question, and I'm going to put them up as we sort of go through the list here. So, how are y'all doing here today? Hope you're having a good Friday. Don't think there's any pressing news I need to get to, so let's get right to the first question. This one from LJ Bookworm. When could we see the legendary item revamp work on Bull Roar for testing? And can we please have more than just 2 very short testing windows? This is a fundamental system to the game, and as many people as can need the time to test it all. So, what do you think?
So the when is still a bit tricky. We're trying to nail it down. I think I mentioned in my interview with Dane earlier this week that it's weeks and months, but I think we're talking closer to weeks at this point for getting the LI revamp stuff on Bull Roar. The specifics are still a little up in the air, as I mentioned in that interview, but it's we've got most of the stuff nailed down, and as I said, the Palantir feedback has been good. As for getting more than just 2 very short testing windows, that's something that I would like to do, but I'm working with the team to understand, what are the costs of doing that and whether that's something we're going to be able to do. So the answer is hopefully we're talking about it, but we don't have anything that we'll be able to confirm yet.
All right. Let me move on then to the second question, which is from Manos2864. Are we considering to revamp old classes? Some new skills, improved animations, skill effects, that kind of thing.
So most of our revamp for old. So the answer is basically yes. In the short term, the sense is that we're going to be focusing on making sure that the current stuff that classes have access to generally works correctly, like we did with the U30 pass, where we were able to bring more classes into raid position and give pretty much every class a trait line that was working for raids. That's something that we're going to continue looking at, especially with the LI revamp. There's going to be changes as part of that, so we're going to be working on stuff there. As for new skills, improving animations and adding skill effects, that's more of a longer term thing. It is definitely something that we'd like to do, especially as we are continuing our rebalance. Sometimes that will mean that some classes will end up getting additional skills, or we'll lose some, or both. So that's definitely not impossible for us to do. It's just on a longer time scale than the balance focus that we've been doing.
All right. Miliana T asks our next question here, which is, we know about some of the big stuff happening, like Goondabat, the Brawler legendary item revamp. What are some of the things headed towards the pipeline that we're excited about inside of the office? We're talking stuff down the road that might change, but anything that seems particularly fun. Also, thank you very much for your comment there.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me to be specific about, because we do want to make sure that we're cognizant of we want to surprise folks, and some stuff is still in discussion, right? And Goondabat is pretty well nailed down, but the stuff that's post Goondabat is definitely more up in the air. We're having some conversations around that already, but they're very high level right now. They're very early. The thing that I want to say is I'm really excited for next year. Our 15th anniversary is going to be pretty big. We're talking about maybe it being sort of like an anniversary year where we really do a blowout for the course of the year and try and do a few more things than we might have done in previous years. I think that there's going to be stuff for players of all types. and content that's all over the place. You're going to see stuff that I think people will be really excited about, stuff that people have been wanting, and some stuff that I don't know, that I haven't seen people talk about, but I know internally at the studio people are really excited about. So I think anniversary year next year, I imagine Jerry will polish up that tagline a little bit for me.
Maybe. This is just a small tease, but you know, one of the things we have been kind of keeping an eye on is some maybe small event-like things that we can sort of pepper into the game. You know, we saw like the Treasure Boogan event as an example of that, and I've heard of something that might happen here in the relatively near future that I'm not going to say anything more about. That seems pretty cool in that regard. So there's my
Yeah,
tease.
Treasure Boogan was great. I would
Yep.
love to do more stuff like that in the future. Definitely something that we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. This next question comes from S. Raposky, perhaps. Are there any plans on further consolidating servers or something like 2 mega servers, one for Europe and one for the United States?
So at this time, we have no plans to do anything of that sort. It's we are definitely looking at what are other games doing in terms of their server structures. Part of the reality is that we're an older game, so those making those kinds of changes is more expensive than if we had built it in from the start. But it's definitely something we're looking at. But that's definitely not I'm saying the word definitely a lot. That's not something that we're going to be targeting in the imminent future. It's something we'll talk about for 2022, but I suspect that it'll be beyond that.
All right. Next one comes from Lucas Lima here, and that is about monetization and localized prices, like in South America. Do we have any thoughts about changing anything?
We understand the frustration. Obviously, our prices are definitely built more around North America and the European Union, and you could say Europe in general, really, at this point. And so for folks who are not in those regions, that this kind of thing is definitely very expensive, and we get that. Unfortunately, this is a pretty big task for us to handle. We're starting to have conversations around it, but like I think I mentioned in the end interview, it's not something that is happening in the imminent future. This is longer term stuff, and we need to have really good conversations with Daybreak and EG7 to make sure that we're aligned with what they're thinking around this stuff.
All right. This one's a big question. I think I need to change my font a bit to get it all on the screen. Let me. There we go.
There you go.
Bit
Hopefully
of a
it's
long one there. You might need to use a magnifying glass on that one. Sorry. A bit of a longer question, but I think the main ask from Ben J1B on Reddit, this Lotro subreddit, is it's been mentioned on a number of occasions the team is limited in size on some projects, like kinship overhauls, PVMP balance, you know, the prioritization that is a requirement of pretty much all game development, right? That sort of thing. Can we get any thoughts on SSG's philosophy regarding open source or collaborative development? This would be some kind of community style development for the game.
Yeah, so these things tend to be pretty tricky and legally tricky, especially. So the first part is on terms of open source. I very much doubt that we will ever be able to go open source, even if we really wanted to. Besides just the legal issues, there's also licensor pieces here. One of the realities is that because we have a license, we have to make sure that stuff that we're working on is approved by our licensor. And so opening it up to the community would mean that it would be a lot more difficult for us to get that approval on a consistent basis, because there's just a lot of additional work that would be required there to get that to happen. Similarly, with collaborative development, putting aside the fact that I don't think that having people work for free essentially is a good idea, or particularly ethical. I think that it's important that people get paid for their work, and therefore we're talking about employment. Even if we wanted to do some sort of collaborative development piece, those legal things that I mentioned before are also that make that stuff really tricky. So for those reasons, open source and collaborative development is not something that we can realistically move towards, and it's not something that we will be trying to move towards anytime soon. There's a lot of work to make that happen. I mean, like, bringing in new employees as it is it takes a lot of work because we have to get them, into our VPN and make sure they have all the right credentials and stuff like that. So moving to this sort of thing would be a huge effort that would probably, at best, like even if we had a ton of support from folks on it, it would still, the cost of it would still be outweighed by the value of it would definitely be outweighed by the cost.
Sorry, we don't have better news for you there, Ben. All right, let me get the next question up. This one is from Jesse Berry. Glad to see official activity on the Lotro subreddit. Thank you. Yep, we do plan to do more of that, actually. We've long been lurkers on the Lotro subreddit, and it's a great community there that's been doing great work for a very long time. So it's nice to be able to do this sort of thing on the
I
Lotro
lurk there multiple
subreddit.
times a day.
Yeah, I do too. I have for years, All right, but now I'm going to be trying to post a little bit more there. So, what about another event like the Bounder's Bounty? Let me make sure I've got that right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, Jesse Perry.
Cord mentioned teasing the idea that we want to do some more event type stuff. This is definitely an event type thing that we're looking at as well. It probably won't be at the same scale of Bounder's Bounty because there was just a lot more moving pieces there, and we probably want to simplify a little bit. But that is something that we are looking at.
All right. The next question comes from Zealous Ideal Cable. Any progress on transfers from the closed worlds?
Yes. So I've been in conversations about this in the past few weeks. The short version is some of the engineering work that we're hoping to do around this has been completed. Right now we are going through and doing some additional migrations that we're starting on the back end. I don't have a firm timetable, but I've been told multiple times that it is a high priority for the team that's working on it. They have everything they need as far as I'm aware, and as of yesterday, they were in progress in getting further on this. My hope is still that this is something that we're able to get done in the next couple months, but we do want to be mindful that we're balancing this against the work that we're doing in Gundabad, and that does take priority.
Next one, a little bit longer. Are there plans to improve the new player, free player experience? For example, there's store advertising at the start of the game that, some people just kind of wish wasn't there. And there's kind of goes into some suggestions as to how we could do it. But what about plans to basically update the new player, free player experience?
Yes, that is something that is actively being discussed for next year. That is something that's been a priority for me, and I've been pushing on it and getting buy-in across the studio. So we'll be doing something. What that thing is, we're still not sure of, but it is something that we are looking at. We think it's a great opportunity, especially with next year being 15 years, and folks might be interested in checking out the game. That we should update some of those aspects of the experience that haven't changed, some of them in more than a decade.
All right, sounds good. Next one from Zamel, I believe. Would there be a possibility to get unsheath weapons, shields when not in combat? And I'm giving credit to Zamel because that's the first person who asked the question in my doc here, but we got this question from probably 2 to 3 other people at least. So let's make sure we get that one. What about it?
Yeah, this is one of those really cool animation changes that is actually kind of expensive to do, because it's something we have to build sort of from the ground up. Yet we have done some of it with the shields, but it's unfortunately not as consistent to just carry over. So I definitely would like to do this, but this is a lower priority for us. So definitely not in the immediate future. Definitely more of a long-term thing.
All right. Bowden is a peddler of the finest pipeweeds in-game. What about a smoking hobby?
Yeah, I'd be curious to think of what a smoking hobby would look like. We're certainly not opposed to it. I think it's something that there's probably interest on from the team. I know that the team in general wants to do more stuff with hobbies, and that is something that we are talking about for the future. I think we have a cool one that we've settled on, but we'll see if smoking becomes more popular.
I don't think, honestly, given other opportunities for hobbies, that smoking would be the one that we would probably go to as our second hobby.
I think
Sorry.
probably not at the second one, but I could see
Yeah.
that happening in the next few years.
All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoking in Lord of the Rings, so I
There
totally
is. There
understand
is.
that. Gandalf has some really cool pipes.
But it's 2021 and all, you know? I mean,
It's true,
yeah.
but no one said it's not the same thing, right? It's more
Yeah.
healthy, and it's
Yeah.
probably there's something in the herbs that is less bad.
It's magic. Yeah, there you
Yes.
go. All right, SAD 1163. Can we make the Stone of the Tortoise XP Disabler a toggleable buff? This is one we certainly get fairly regularly.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're aware of. It's something that we would like to do, and I'm looking to see if this is something that we can try and find time for next year. I think that there's more opportunities besides just the Stone of the Tortoise if we were going to go down that route. Maybe more of like I don't know, like a slider or toggle or something. But we'll see what the team says once they get an opportunity to start thinking about it. I know that players want this, and Treebeard obviously shows the value for players of being able to level slower, and obviously the Stone of the Tortoise before that. So we'll see what the team says once they're able to really think about it post Gundabad.
All right. Let me get this up briefly. All right, so this next one is from Vroom Fondel, I guess. Vroom Fondel. Any plans for additional other ways to halt XP gain? This is kind of similar to it. You know, if we didn't do a toggleable Stone of the Tortoise or something like that, what about other ways?
Yeah, I think this is sort of the thing that I'm leaning towards. The tough thing is I don't have a good sense of like how technically feasible is this. It's something that other people on the team have mentioned to me that they've been interested in doing. So it's just a question of, how big of a thing is it that for us to do it, and when can we slot it in? But it's something we're hoping that we'll be able to do potentially next year, depending on feasibility.
I have to admit, I am pretty sus on the user asking this next question. If you are the real Bingo Boffin, I want to know how you got from inside of the game onto Reddit. But this, someone claiming to be the Bingo Boffin is asking, will the Brawler be available before or with the Gundabad expansion? And when can we expect it available in the public testing phase of Bull Roar?
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer the first part of that question. I don't remember what we've said in that in the past. I don't know if Cord, you remember specifically. On the Bull Roar side, I can answer that we're hoping to get that ready in the next few weeks, more than months. But it's in that range as well with allies. It's probably going to be around the same time that we'll be giving folks availability for that.
You'll know more about the content of Gundabad up to and including when you'll be able to play the Brawler as we get closer to our pre-sale that we're going to be doing here. So we'll have more information as we get closer to that.
We know the answer to that. We just can't share it yet.
Yeah, well, exactly. We know PVMP gear will be available for 140 cap, but has there been any decisions on further work on the moors for PVMP? Changes in the actual field of battle, or mechanics, or things like class balance?
So the focus for I believe Gundabad is that we're going to be doing PVMP balance mostly, fixing some bugs, just some polish stuff. It's not going to be a huge pass. We have started conversations at a high level around what does support for PVMP in the future really look like. It's something that I mentioned in my interview with Bloodborne, but I want to make sure that we have an understanding of like either we are going to support this or we're not going to support this, and we need to actually make the decision and be clear with players what that decision is. So we're having those conversations, but we haven't settled on an answer yet. It's something that is very early because of the Gundabad stuff. But once we get things a bit more settled there, it's something that I'm gonna have a broader conversation with the team about.
Now, I could actually mention having just recently been in one of the company meetings about PVMP work that we actually do have some itemization work that'll be happening here in the relatively near future for PVMP. It is not overhauling PVMP per se, but it is going to allow for some updated gearing and things like that. Additionally, we are working on class balance, and that will have, impacts on PVMP as well. So I think we're going to see some dedicated work and some changes rolling out to live that have been being done in recent months in the relatively near future here. But in terms of, say, a top to bottom overhaul of PVMP, I don't think we're going to see that. However, we are seeing some pretty significant work on PVMP, because I've seen some of this itemization work in that, and it's not necessarily small in scope. And there have been some people on Palantir in particular who have also had an opportunity to provide some feedback to the the people doing the work there. So we're getting there. We're getting there, but I don't know what the exact time frame is for all aspects of that work.
Yeah, I don't believe it's going to go past Gundabad. I believe it's going to be included with Gundabad. I just can't remember if it's coming before or with specifically.
I was going to say with, so maybe
with is probably a safer answer.
Yeah, we'll just say
it's definitely happening.
The opinion of the jury here, which is you and me, is that it'll probably be something like with, but we could be totally wrong here. All right, next one is from Dota Swilt. Any plans to get DirectX 12 with the graphic update?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking at as part of it. We still sort of require DirectX 9, which is not something that we're thrilled with, but we understand why that exists, and we would love to be able to push towards a more modern DirectX. I don't know if we'll be able to go all the way to 12, or if we'll just be able to do at least more support with it. But that is part of the conversation we're having for future graphic upgrades.
To be clear, we do support DirectX 10 and 11, but there's still a fundamental requirement of DirectX 9 sort of involved in that. So, you can run on DX11 and see some benefits, but we can't, it's not an easy process to go to DirectX 12 because of some of the compatibility issues. So that's why the launcher itself at this point will take a look at the end-user runtime installer from Microsoft and update things as necessary there. But it's not uncommon for customer service, as part of the technical workthroughs that they'll do for their ticketing queue, to help people with DirectX issues run the installer in that. And that is still a current thing that has to be done here right now. So DirectX 9 is pretty baked into our game at the moment. And although you can run 10 and 11, we still do have some issues that do require DirectX 9, and that does mean some kind of legacy stuff associated with it.
Yeah, as for the second question here around localization and translation for German specifically, so localization is definitely a priority of ours and something we're focusing on, and we're trying to do, as we introduce new things, we're trying to focus especially on making sure that the new stuff that we're introducing is localized to German and French consistently, and is correct. Obviously there are still issues and we're working to fix them, but we are prioritizing those aspects. I totally understand that there's frustration that in other parts of the game that care is not necessarily there. The issue is not that we're not aware of it, though certainly please file bug reports. It never hurts to see what quantity of players are running into these issues. The issue generally is that at different times the studio has been more or less focused on that, and we're trying to work through that backlog of stuff that has not been localized, and we're getting further in every update, but it is a work in progress and it's going to continue to be that. So this is definitely not an issue of quality assurance that we are aware of this issue. This is just an issue of finding the time to get through all of this. There's a lot of text in this game, and we keep adding more to it. And the priority is going to be to make sure that the new stuff that we're introducing is properly translated. So going through the older stuff is something we want to do, but it's not something we're able to do on as consistent of a basis. I know for a fact that there's a bunch of old stuff that is getting picked up in the next update because I've been informed of it. So we're working on it. We appreciate your patience, but it's going to take time.
All right. The next question is from Kefron. Is there any UI rework in the future, at least able to scale the current one? You always want to try out Lotro again, but probably in 4K and such, the UI elements are very, very small on your monitor.
Yeah, this is something that I believe I answered on the forums the other day, but it's something that we want to do, and we're hoping to get done uh, potentially next year. This isn't as simple of a change as it seems, just because there's a lot of compatibility issues to deal with. The thing that we're probably going to be focusing on is making sure that, you know, at 1920 to 1080, those resolutions are the ones that are probably going to be the most targeted, just because that seems to be, based on hardware surveys, the most common resolution that players play at. Higher resolutions like 2560 and, you know, going all the way up to 4K are starting to get used more frequently, but there's still a much smaller group of players. So we want to make sure that we're at least focused on supporting the bulk of players as much as we can be.
All right. Next question comes from one of the coolest Reddit names I personally have heard. Cat from the Future asks, are there any plans to buff champions on the legendary servers? Their DPS is in kind of a bad place right now because of their level cap that they're currently at. The curves on champion stats are maybe not, you know, at their peak at the current level cap that they're at. So any chance of getting some champion buffs on the legendary world?
It's not something we're going to be able to look at before Gundabad. So for folks on Shadowfax, you will probably have the opportunity to see Moria before we're going to look at this. We probably won't do anything for that. But Treebeard, there's a potential for us to look at it by then. I don't have enough of a sense of how bad the problem is, frankly, and that's just because it hasn't been I'm aware that this is a complaint, but the complaints that I've seen haven't been to the point where it's unplayable. Like, I understand that when you're at an end cap for an update, you want to be able to play in the high level stuff consistently, and you're not able to do so right now because other classes are performing better. And that's not great, but it's just not the priority right now with Gundabad coming out. To the follow-up question, in terms of SSG, if we're aware of how dependent champions are on the current LI system, yes, we are very aware of that. It's something that is being taken into consideration as part of the LI revamp. I know that the folks working on that right now are very aware of it, and it's something we've had several conversations about. They're working on their fix for it. I don't know what that fix is. It's not because they haven't figured it out. It's because I just don't know enough information to be useful on that, unfortunately. But when we get to the point that we are showing that stuff off and players have the opportunity to see it in Bull Roar, there will be a better understanding of what that stuff looks like for sure.
All right. Albin the Ocean asks, over the years, we've seen the class traits and virtues overhauls. Any thought given to a racial heritage trait update? Right now, there are a few ideal class race combos for maximizing DPS like Elf Hunter, High Elf Warden, Stout Axe Fire, Runekeeper, etc. Given the unique and detailed histories of places in Middle-earth, it'd be cool to see heritage play more than a cosmetic role, so that classes could be any race without sacrificing numbers.
Yeah, it's something we've thought about. It's something that we think would be interesting to talk about for 2022, but it's certainly not set in stone for that. I personally am of the opinion that we need to be really careful about creating power imbalances as a result of race heritage kind of stuff. You know, I think generally I would prefer players play the race and class that they enjoy and not play the combination that they feel they have to play in order to be able to compete at the top levels. So we're definitely looking at that, but it is not imminent by any stretch. It's something we'll see if we can get in for 2022. I wouldn't hold out a ton of hope for that though, because it is a bit of a smaller system than some of the other stuff.
Okay, the next one is from Sotos4. There was a rumored hinted graphical update for 2022. What's up with it?
So I've talked about the graphical update before. It's not going to be, you know, a switch that is flipped and suddenly everything looks dramatically better one patch. We're going to continue improving graphics as we create new updates. I mean, U30 looked better than U29, and so on and so forth. So it's something that you'll continue to see graphical improvements for stuff that we release in 2022. But the graphical update notion is more of an ongoing piece of work than a specific chunk that will end forever.
All right. From Sintez, the minds of, thanks. You're welcome. Question about Treebeard. How likely is it we'll find time to rebalance the Mines of Moria content when Mines of Moria gets released in December, January on Treebeard?
That's a good question. The answer right now is we don't really know. The opportunity is going to be a lot easier for Treebeard because Treebeard is going to be at Moria for a lot longer than we've had Anor, and certainly where Anor and Nithla, I should say, and certainly where Shadowfax will be. It's going to come down to, you know, how bad are the issues that players find, how many players are engaging with that content, and what is the priority of other stuff that we're working on. So right now, I would say that it is not super likely that we're going to plan it for this cycle, but it's something that I want us to be more aware of for the future with new legendary servers when they come. It's not going to be, we're not going to be doing any new legendary servers anytime soon, but it's something that we want to think about more holistically so that it's not just a fire and forget kind of thing.
This one actually had a second question at the tail end, which is, how do we think the legendary item rework will impact low-level content like Moria? Will the changes make the classes overall stronger, and if the difficulty of the area won't get adjusted, even easier to beat?
So I sort of answered the second question there
Yeah.
with Aindane earlier. I think some classes will end up having a better experience, some will have a slightly worse experience, but overall we think it will be a better experience, orthogonal to power, because the system in general will make things easier. So the hope is that, for Treebeard, for specifically when they get to Moria, that they'll be able to play with that new system, and we think that that's quite likely that they'll be able to do so, and as a result, we think it'll be better in general. We'll see what the impact of that looks like when we get there. It's going to be hard to adjust until we have some of that data.
All right, I'm going to have to shrink this one a little bit. Loving the new difficulty settings on the legendary worlds. When will we see the difficulty settings reaching the live worlds? And this question is from a penitent whaler.
So starting with that one, we don't have a scheduled time yet for when those are going to come over. In part, that's because right now we've only seen the difficulty settings with Shadows of Angmar, and we'd like to see it with a couple more level caps before we make a decision in terms of how it's performing. I think that there's an opportunity there for the future, but it's not something that's imminent by any stretch.
All right. There were some other questions in here as well. Like this person likes the new difficulty settings, wondering if there are plans to take greater strides to improve and encourage that experience for players. So that kind of granularity. I know that we've got some other questions in there that I've seen from the Reddit about what about doing it for XP, for example, or something like that.
What I like about the difficulty settings is twofold. One is that you get the opportunity to play the game the way that you like, and two, it really naturally encourages people to group without forcing them to group. And I think that second aspect is something that's really valuable, and we want to look in the future and see where are other places where we can encourage players to group, incentivize players to group without making them feel like they have to. So that I think that aspect definitely is something we want to do more with.
All right. Next question is sort of a big one. When are we going to be going back to the Shire to save it?
Not for a while. Not for a while. When that will be, I can't say.
Yeah.
Both because we haven't decided it, and because even if I did know, I couldn't tell you. But we want to make sure that we walk through all the beats along the way to the Shire and some stories we want to tell in the meantime before we get there.
All right. Next question is from, let me see, sorry. Ezar Lore, I believe, is as our lore, something like that. What are the future intentions for class balance? Anything being done to address inconsistencies, like individual class trait lines that are, in this person's opinion, basically useless for anything other than questing landscape content? They then go on to name some names and such. Are there any plans to do this with other left-behind trait trees?
So I think I mentioned before, one of these Q&As with Cord, our first goal was to make sure that uh, players who could play landscape could play with whatever class and trait combination that they wanted, and that is something that we still think that we're achieving, and so we're comfortable with that. The second goal past that is to make sure that at high level content, that every class has at least one role that they can play realistically there. And so that's been working as well with U30. We've been pretty happy with the changes that we made there and the reception to them. We're seeing a lot more diversity in terms of raid makeups at those higher levels than we were seeing before, which is great. The tricky part is now with the LI revamp, that's a pretty fundamental shift in a way that a lot of classes were previously balanced. So again, our goal is going to be those two things first, to make sure that players can play through landscape with whatever race, so whatever class and trait combination that they want, and then on the high level content that at least every class has one trait line that works there. Once we feel like we have that in a better place, that's when we're going to want to start going through and looking at some of these other trait lines that have been left behind a bit more to get them up to snuff. We did a little bit of that with U30. We want to do more in the future, but that stuff is probably going to be mostly post Gundabad.
I swear, next comfortable 197 is not me, even though this is a question I'd love to see done. Any chance on expanding the quest track to have more than 5?
Yeah, this is something that I'm not a fan of as well. I've been playing the game a lot, and I have a lot of quests that I'm going through, and it's a pain in the ass having to remember which 5 that I should be selecting. It's something I've asked about. It's a good UI quality of life improvement, but it's not something we're going to be able to get done for Gundabad. That is a conversation I've had with engineering. They're aware of it.
All right. Routine pressure 191 asks, there are many little things that they would like to see changed or improved, but they wanted to ask about 2 of them. The quest tracker being limited to 5, which we just answered, but also the crafting bags are a big help when it comes to storing crafting materials, but there are professions that require a lot of materials, like cooking, and some from lower tiers, which either take up a lot of bank space to store, or you pay through the nose of the auction house for them, or you take time away from other aspects of the game to farm them. So this person's basically wondering about the ability to have additional space to deal with that. Whether that be much more space in the crafting bags or some other thing.
Yeah, we are very aware of the space crunch that players are under, especially players who are really engaged. We are continuing to look at ways to improve that. The idea of a server-wide crafting wallet is interesting. I don't know enough to have a good answer in terms of how feasible it is. I'm not sure whether or not that's something we can easily do, but it's an interesting idea, and I think it's worth discussing internally to see, what are the pros and cons of that approach, as well as the feasibility of it.
My understanding is that the wallet has a way of being stored on the character that has perhaps a little bit more weight than something that would be in a carry-all, for example. So I think that there are limits as to kind of how much and how big we want that wallet-style storage to be. So I know, over the years, it's one of the things that engineers and others have kind of kept an eye on too, with an eye toward game performance, to make sure that we're not putting so much in there that it's causing a problem. It sounds like if we have a system with tons of crafting materials, that might be a problem if we were to just add that to something like a wallet. But that doesn't mean that, one, it couldn't be done, given, the fact it's 2021 and all. also perhaps other systems in place. So, but I know in the past, the size of the wallet is something that has to be considered in regard to game performance. So, the idea of taking some of the stuff that is perhaps most bloated in our crafting system and then putting that into a wallet, while that would certainly be great in terms of the inventory kind of crunch that goes on, I think a carry-all is generally going to be a lighter approach than putting it into a barter wallet.
Yeah, that's something I certainly don't know as well, but I'm starting to have those conversations with folks.
All right, Napster, that's where you went. Napster 15 says, previously the dev team said they were planning to curb weapon swapping. Can we share more details on what that looks like?
Yeah, our expectation is that we're going to be prohibiting weapon swapping during combat. So similar to how you can't change armor during combat, you also will no longer be able to change weapons during combat. This is something we totally understand that champ mains have a lot of concerns about, because we know that weapon swapping is a very key aspect of playing champ at a high level in high-end content. So that's what I was talking earlier about, our awareness of that and the fact that we're taking that into account as we're making these changes. We are aware, we are taking that into account. We are figuring out what that path is going to look like. I don't know the specifics of it, but that's as much as I can share.
All right. P. Pontex asked the next question. Can we update the key loot box system? They remember playing the game about a decade ago and loving the fact that they were getting keys in game that they could then use to open the loot boxes that were present. A few years ago, we swapped from being in kind of trying to manage doling out the in-game key currency to making it a Lotro store only item as part of an overall shift in philosophy to our loot box system that our executive producer Rob Ciccolini put a message out on the forums, and I can probably call up a link to that. But, the change that this person is referencing from about a decade ago or so had some precedence in trying to remove some of the loot box hooks that were present through the regular gameplay and sort of acknowledge what they are, what we wanted them to be, and just sort of be upfront. Hey, if you want to open a loot box, there's a key in the store. But this person is saying they liked basically the fact that they were getting it in game. And what about doing that again?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the current way we do loot boxes personally, but there's differing opinions on the team, so certainly not my decision exclusively. But it is something that we're having a conversation around to see, is this something that we want to change? If we want to change it, what are some of the ways that we can change it that would be more beneficial? I've pitched some ideas, other folks have pitched some ideas. I think we have some good ones if we decide to go that direction, but we have to have those conversations first and get agreement within the team to make sure that that's something we can do. I think some of it is we need to devote more resources to making sure that the implementation, either the current one or whatever new one we decide upon, if we decide to go that direction, isn't just sort of thrown into there, but is given a bit more support so that it is more of an enjoyable experience. Because I don't think right now it is as much as it could be.
All right. I know that we've got about 15 minutes left, and we are at 34-ish in terms of the questions. So I think, yeah, I'm going to skip a few of the ones that we really didn't have our answer is that we will have to look into it. We don't have anything to announce really at this time. So let me move over to one that I know that we could perhaps talk a little bit more in detail about and skip a few. This one is from Fenarian. Have there been any talks in sort of reinvesting in Lelia's market with brand new cosmetic clothes, armor, and weapons? We know there are currently plans to expand avatar customization on the faces and hairstyle side, but has the team thought about expanding customization further overall? Things like running animations, standing positions, combat idle positions, etc.
Yeah, so I think that there's actually like two separate questions here. The customization one, yeah, we're focusing on the avatar stuff right now. I think once we get further along with that, then there's the opportunity for us to shift and add in additional customizations beyond that. I understand the connecting with the Lollies market. Lollies market is something that we're examining as part of our monetization conversations to say, okay, we have this thing, we created it a long time ago, we haven't consistently used it. Is it something we want to use more consistently? Is it something we don't want to use more consistently? We should make a decision around what our expectations for that kind of thing are, and be consistent in terms of our approach moving forward. So I think that we will have additional customization options that we introduce to players for free. We're going to have continued support for paid options. Whether or not those will go through Lollia's market, that's where things are more up to debate, and I don't have an answer for you right now. That's part of the conversation that I'm leading.
All right. Next question here is from No One 8176. Will Bjarnings be updated to a damage support class? This being, by the way, in like character select, character creation, or will we change the creation description to healer?
That's a good question. I think generally speaking that we should provide in the character creator the description that is accurate to what the class can do. That said, the class can do damage support. It just does not excel at it right now in some situations. So we definitely need to update it, but it's not the same. But we will also be attempting to balance for that stuff in the future, as I mentioned before.
I heard some conversations inside of the office about some identification of kind of which classes need specific attention on the character creation screen tooltip text. So I know that we have given some recent thought to what needs to be done there, and it's just a matter of, getting it through the development pipeline at some point in the future here.
Yeah, it's something we definitely need to fix. I agree.
All right, let's see. Pre-1 TWA. When can I pre-order Gundabad?
Yeah, Cord, when can you pre-order Gundabad?
I could tell you. Yeah, no, I can't tell you exactly. But I think, what do we have to say about the dating on pre-ordering Gundabad?
It's coming soon.
Yeah.
It's coming soon. We're all very excited to give folks that glimpse into Gundabad and get them excited for it.
Yeah.
We think that people are going to be pretty happy with the stuff that we show. As for the question about bonus items, yeah, we've got some really cool bonus items. Some stuff that we've done in previous expansions, some stuff that we're trying brand new for this one. Definitely the goal is to stay away from pay to win stuff, while giving you some cosmetics. We also want to try stuff that is more utility item kind of stuff that we think will be really interesting for players. We're curious to see how players react to it. We think they'll be excited, but time will tell.
I could talk a little bit about the process, though, of where we get to pre-ordering Gundabad. And in the fairly near future, we're about towards the tail end of the middle of August at this point here, right? We're going to be doing some previews on Brawler. We've got a couple of article type things that'll be out, perhaps about, at the very least, probably about Brawler, maybe legendary items if we can get it all locked down in time to do so. But we're going to be doing some previews here, over the next coming weeks, although not too immediate future here. And then once it goes to Brawler, we get a chance at feedback. You'll probably see us do a pre-order campaign. And we'll have a lot more information about how that's going to roll out, when that rolls out, what the prices are, what's in each package, all that sort of thing. The goal is to do a preview of the various packages. It may be right before we go live, but we are planning to do a little bit of a sneak peek on some of this stuff as well. And then we will go live with a pre-order, for a time that seems right before we actually then release Update 31 Gundabad. So I think kind of over the next couple of months, that's sort of the process you'll see roll out here. But we're not at a position where we can say, it's going to be X date or even X part of what month in terms of Gundabad that we can talk about publicly.
Yeah, we promised that there will be a period between when we say, hey, you can pre-order Gundabad, and when Gundabad releases. They will not be on the same day.
All right. Strider 2694. It appears you're too late to post your comment again. Hey, no, you're not. Some other people were, not you though. Hopefully you can get to it within the hour. Remanaged. About the champion class. It's clear to anyone who plays on Shadowfax Treebeard champion. Oh, we already talked about this one. Champion DPS needing work on Shadowfax and Treebeard. So let's skip that bit. When Bombadil came out, the devs were quick to nerf one of the bear heals and such. Well, right. Now champions are unbalanced. Can we get a bit of time to scale champ DPS? We already talked about this.
We did talk about this briefly, so I'm gonna let you find a new question. But what I can say right now is I wasn't there during the Bombadil time when the bear heals and the Yellow Guardian scales happened. But talking with the team and looking at reactions on the forums, a lot of folks were frustrated at the way that stuff was handled and the way that affected both, the legendary server at the time, Bombadil, but also the current live game at end game. So we want to be much more careful about that sort of thing, and that's part of the reason that instead of sort of shooting from the hip and making a change right now, we are giving it a little bit more time so that we have a bit more bandwidth to think about it before after we release Goon to Bat, so that we make a better decision for the long term of the game.
All right, this is perhaps maybe a little bit of a selfish question to pick an answer, but I'm going to do so anyway. This one comes from, let's see, can I do this? What am I doing wrong? No. I'm copying and pasting here. All right. Yep, my good Apollo asks, how do I feel about the current format of Court of the Rings? This person in particular has really enjoyed the fact that of recent weeks we've been doing a lot of this kind of thing. I agree. That's always actually been a large part of what Court of the Rings was about. While we do some gameplay and all that here, its primary purpose has never been to be like, watching gameplay per se. It's always been about the communication between the studio and the Twitch community here. And YouTube and Facebook as well. So the more of this kind of Q&A stuff that we do, the better. Realistically, it's not going to happen every week. But we've been pretty good about keeping up a fairly decent pace, and we'll have to see how well we can keep up this pace in the future. But we love doing the Q&As. You tend to like the Q&As more than gameplay, which makes sense because that's better content. That's just
I think that we're not the Twitch streamers that they're excited to watch play.
Yeah, exactly.
The gameplay is not that exciting. We definitely want to do more of the stuff, as Cord is saying. He's really been owning this piece, and I'm excited to see what we do in the future. But we've talked about doing additional stuff like scenarios, strolls. It's not something we'll be able to do imminently again because of Goon to Bad, but I would love for us to be able to do more of that kind of thing in the future.
Yeah, and I do think we'll probably do something special for Goon to Bad. I don't know exactly what format it's going to take, whether it's maybe a little bit of a hangout at some point or a special post Q&A with Sev, or what kind of mix of all or some of this.
Yeah, gotta throw Sev back into this chat.
Yeah, but we are it again. But we do have plans to do that, within the next couple of months here. We've been talking a little bit about that. So, the Q&A stuff has always been the best part of the show, and well understood that that's the best part of the show. And yeah, we totally want to do as much of that as we can. So, okay, let me ask a question from Squirrel. This is a fairly complex one.
Probably
so let me read it.
Then.
It might be. What is our view on a longer than average expansion lifecycle? It used to be that we had an expansion plus 1 or 2 quest packs. Of recent note, with like 29 and 30, it looks like some of the Minas Morgul stuff is repeatable. This person has some, critical thoughts about it. What is our current plan on further adventures? Okay, well, let's just handle the first one too. What about our kind of expansion and quest pack lifecycle? What's going on there?
So we've actually seen better engagement long term from players as a result of some of the smaller updates we've been doing. Blood of Azog did reasonably well, not as well as we wanted to, but it still did well. Wildwood did well, and it's something that we're looking to moving forward as a model for what we kind of want to do. I think actually the expectation will be less of us just doing, an expansion every now and again, and more of us doing stuff in between expansions and trying to give players more consistent stuff to play with. The expansions will still be the big chunk of stuff, but the smaller content in between will give players stuff to do in between. And that'll be of varying sizes and varying scopes and varying kinds. Just like you saw, Wildwood is very different from Blood of Azog, and some of the anniversary stuff and festivals we were doing. They're all over the place. We want to do more of that kind of thing.
We will be continuing to sort of put out quest packs and that between expansions and all that as well. So
Yep.
No worries there. And I guess I would also just say that, while we've largely weathered COVID, some of the last year and a half in terms of scheduling has been somewhat shifted due to that work. So I don't know that you can necessarily look at, say, the past 12 month and expect that to be a precedent setting sort of kind of schedule.
Yeah. We definitely don't look at it as like we're locked into this sort of thing. We know that we need to do expansions periodically, but the stuff in between that is us looking in saying, okay, what do we think is worth trying? What's gone well for us in the past? What are other games doing? And seeing what happens based on what players think.
All right, let's get on to the next question then. What about more plans for like further adventures?
We are going to have more further adventures. We liked letting you journey along with Bilbo, seeing what he was doing at Rivendell. We haven't settled on what the next further adventures will be, but it is something that we are targeting for next year.
And where does the balance fall between introducing new mini systems and events and being able to keep them up to date? So, for example, things like the Curator, the Midsummer Presents, some of the smaller things we do, the Treasure Boogan event, for example. Where do we fall in terms of being able to introduce these kinds of things long term while also being able to support them long term?
My hope to move the team to, and it's something that is not set in stone, but is something that I would like us to be able to get to, is that when we introduce new stuff, it's because we're planning to support it for the long run and not just to try it and see how it goes. Some of that will still happen because some things just won't be successful, or they will balloon in scope or something else will happen to them. But generally, whenever we're talking about introducing something like missions, like that's not something that we want to do once and then throw away. It's something we want to do more consistently. But we'll see depending on the reception to different stuff, where the balance falls on that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, we made it through about not quite a third, but that's fine. We got a lot of questions and answers in, I think, here based on this Reddit Q&A. I'm expecting at some point in the future we'll do one of these sorts of things again. I really do want to give a shout out to our Lotro subreddit community. Y'all have been great for a very long time, and not just with guides, screenshots, and just general tenor of the place. It's a pretty chill, fun place to hang out. Has been for a long time. So thank you for allowing us to do this Q&A from there, and thank you, Reninia, for joining me on Court of the Rings here today, taking an hour here to answer these kind of questions, and I'm pretty sure we'll have you on in the relatively near future here again.
Can't get rid of me that easily.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Have fun, everybody. We have a hard stop at 1 o'clock due to a meeting, so we're going to wrap up the show here at this time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you again next Friday for more Court of the Rings. Have fun.